Hey there. So this is first video outlining the elements and principles of art that we'll be using in class. We'll use one video for each of the elements and each of the principles, and we'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'm going to use as my notes the same notes that you have available to you for class. So I'm just going to be following this handout here with the definitions and descriptions that you have. So I'm going to start with the element of line today. If I put my drawing instrument down on a surface and move it, I'm going to create a mark. That moving mark is essentially a line. Lines are one-dimensional. They pretty much just have length. You could argue that if I made it thicker, it would have width as well, but for our sakes, we're just going to be using the definition of line as a moving mark and being one-dimensional. Lines often define edges. If I ask you to draw a portrait or a picture, most people would start with lines, outlining the objects, whatever they may be, that they're going to draw. So we say that lines often define edges. We'll take a look at how that works here shortly. Lines serve to lead people's eyes. You can use them very intentionally to lead people's eyes through a picture or through a composition. Just kind of makes sense. You probably, if you look at the whiteboard here, your eye sees that, hits that line and follows the direction that it goes. Another important concept to keep in mind is that a line can be implied. It doesn't have to be a continuous mark. It could be a series of marks that happen to visually relate to each other. So if I continue these dots and dashes, you can get the same sense of a diagonal line. Lines express feelings as well. So what we mean by that would be, for instance, a horizontal line would express a sense of calm and tranquility. Imagine being on a calm, still lake where the water is just completely smooth and flat, horizontal. A vertical line, straight up and down, expresses a sense of stability, of being solid. And a diagonal line expresses a sense of movement. You can imagine a tree, a big strong tree growing vertically. It seems very solid, very resilient. Take that same tree, and if you see it come across that tree on a diagonal, you'll get a sense of possibly that tree falling down. If you combine straight lines, horizontal, vertical, diagonals, you can create zigzag lines as well. And if we make marks that are more fluid and flowing, we call those curvilinear lines. So let's take a look at how lines have been used by artists. Here's an example of a work of art by Leonardo da Vinci. You can certainly see the outline of the figures, of their clothing, their facial features. He uses lines. He also uses lines very effectively in hatching to create different values, areas of lightness and darkness. Jumping way ahead to more modern times, lines were used frequently, and still are, by artists to create optical effects. So these op artists, Bridget Riley and Victor Vasarely, are two examples of artists who use lines to create optical effects, almost illusions. Of course, Victor Vasarely uses his lines, connects some of them into geometric shapes, which we'll cover next. Bridget Riley, here you can see zigzag lines, wavy, curvilinear lines, certainly express a sense of movement. And then lastly, the idea of a line defining an edge and a line leading a person's eye can be seen in this work by Thomas Cole, the Oxbow. The Oxbow, the river itself, is a curvilinear line. It varies in width and appears to move from the distant background toward the foreground. Also, we have this edge of the foreground, which is green and full of vegetation and foliage. That edge stands out as a diagonal line, as do these tree trunks. So the picture is composed using these edges, using these lines in a very strong diagonal manner, which leads your eye from left to right, right to left, and from the bottom right corner to the top left corner. So that's our first example of an element of art, the element of